Way back before the Nintendo Switch was released, we always wondered, how would this thing be used most? As a docked home console, as an undocked portable, as a hybrid in between? Well, now thanks to Nintendo's latest financial report, we have data to say which one is the correct Switch answer. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Force. I've got Gabe here, and Nintendo made this genius graphic that shows Nintendo Switch gameplay trends for Japan, the US, and Europe. And it highlights how players are using the system. And this is brilliant because it's something, like I said, we've discussed throughout the Switch's life cycle and even preceding its birth. And now we actually have numbers, Gabe.
Yes, and surprising numbers. This is really surprising to me, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting because it says at the bottom, there's a note that says, figures for Nintendo Switch gameplay for registered Nintendo account users gathered via the internet, showing hardware where playtime for either docked or undocked modes exceeds 80% to determine if that gameplay is primary. So you need to use your system for 80% of the time to be considered one of these blue or red bar parts of the chart. So we've got what looks to be about 18% of players play majority of their Switch in docked TV mode, and then 30% of players play majority in tabletop or handheld, and then you've got this big, nice smorgasbord of about roughly about 52% of people, I'd say, in the middle there that play a mix, and that would be less than 80-20. So their split might be 70-30, 60-40, 50-50, something like that.
All right, Zach, where do you fall in here?
I mean, we talked about this off air, because we record so much of the footage, I would be in the TV mode. But when I'm playing on my own time, I definitely am part of the undocked. So I guess that puts me right in that middle gray area.
Same here, honestly, although I don't play handheld as much as I would like. I don't travel as much as you also, so that's a variable. But I definitely fall in the blue one just because recording, and that's where most of my Switch usage comes in. And even when I'm just playing for fun at this point, I just sit at my desk. That's the way I prefer to play because I'm used to it. But, a good portion of the audience is using it in both modes, and that's a success for Nintendo because that's what they wanted all along.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to me that docked has so little, and it makes sense. And I think it just speaks to the fact that this is a really successful idea. I feel like if it would have been mostly docked, say this graph showed that blue bar taking up half of it, right, or 40% or something, then I feel like you can look and say, okay, people didn't really want this hybrid. People wanted just another home console. But this shows that 7 million Switches sold, and a big part of the reason why is because their idea and their main sort of feature is working. The fact that the largest swath of people, 52% roughly, are playing both ways, I think that's got to be a success for Nintendo.
Here, we can do a little bit of a deeper dive here. Reggie had an interview with Forbes this week to talk about Super Mario Odyssey launching, but they did touch on other things. And he did say that Nintendo loves to be different, that they don't want to be like these other companies, and that, right, yes, they're competitors, but Nintendo does pride itself on being different. And it seems like with this in particular, it paid off. It doesn't always pay off, as example by the Wii U, but for this, there's an audience for handhelds only. That's clear because that section is bigger than the docked only section. So
right,
people maybe don't want a 3DS just because, it's a little too small. I mean, whatever. There's a lot of reasons why people might not want a 3DS. But a handheld Switch gives you closer to a console experience. You're getting more console parity as far as the games go. And that shows that, hey, this red section, these people here, once the 3DS is gone, I can expect that to probably grow a little bit, right? Maybe?
Absolutely. I think that's also another area to, make some speculation based on is okay, clearly there is a market, like you said, for straight up handheld. And does this give Nintendo a little bit more security in saying, hey, we can phase the 3DS out and we'll still have that handheld market while also having the option to provide, home console and be able to say oh yeah, this game is in 1080p if it's docked, and if you're more of a just you like to play on your TV, we still have that option. But yeah, I think this does, to me, it says, hey, it's okay to start getting rid of the 3DS, but perhaps Nintendo looks at it a different way and says, Yes, but 70% of people, are not playing it completely that way. So maybe they could also have a 3DS, because then, they'll have a Switch for home and a 3DS for away. And I don't know where their mentality is. Or they say, oh, God, there's such a market for handheld. We might as well continue to sell the 2DS, for people that don't want to drop $300 on a Switch. Either way, I think that the big takeaway is that the Switch idea was a smart one, and it's paying off.
Can I ask you something, though?
Yes.
Do you think, and this is a silly question almost, but do you think
Yes.
that Nintendo ever releases another console that isn't a hybrid? Like, I feel like that would be so hard for them to go back to. Like, just a regular console that you can't take with you?
It's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of that would sort of depend on the entire ecosystem, the entire market, where things are at. Inevitably there'll be a PS5 and some future iteration of the Xbox, and the Switch will seem far behind.
Of course, but then you make a Switch. There's phones
it's
with
the same exact situation. The Switch then, gets 4K or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my phone has 4K, like a 4K screen on it, and like, yeah, it's different just watching, streaming video on Netflix on your phone as opposed to like running games. I understand, but I'm saying, I think it's difficult since this dock thing seems to be such a success. I don't know if I ever go back on it if I'm Nintendo, but who knows? I mean, I think it's like I said, I think it's silly to say that Nintendo will never make another console that isn't like a hybrid, but it was just an interesting thought, I thought.
For sure, and I think what they do with 3DS will be telling. Do they find another way to come in at sort of a $100 price point or a $150 price point with some sort of handheld successor? Do they completely sort of wrap up the 3DS and let the Switch, see if they can stand on its own as a single platform? Are they okay with extra producing Switch in order to replace the idea of two platforms? And I think that will dictate a lot. So if you see the 3DS go away, I don't think there's a situation where Nintendo splits it again. Like, hey, for Switch 2, we're going to make a Switch Home and a Switch Go. And I feel like that would seem like a loss of value. So I think the way that they'd have to do it is maintain the 3DS as an exclusive handheld and iterate on that, and then the Switch could go back to a home console. But I don't see a way where they could convert the Switch and split it and try to hey, we're going to sell you a $300 home console and a $200 handheld. Ta-da, $500 for what you just paid. You know what I mean? Value proposition wise, they've kind of backed themselves into a little bit of a corner, but maybe it's a corner that they will love being in. So far, it seems like it.
Here's my hypothesis. And in this same financial briefing, Nintendo does make sure to say, hey, 3DS is still doing well despite Switch existing. So cool, congratulations. And I didn't mean that to sound as condescending as it did. I genuinely mean congratulations. But at some point, 3DS isn't going to exist. There's no way. Especially with the success of mobile for Nintendo. They again, in the same financial briefing, there was a lot here. It was 15 pages of information. They did say that they want to continue to make 2 to 3 mobile games per year. So I feel like for the people that want to be exclusively mobile, I think your phone is going to be it. At some point, 3DS goes away and the Switch becomes the hybrid that it was always meant to be. And maybe for the next console, keep it hybrid, but introduce, 1440p or 4K, whatever the case may be. But I do feel like at some point the 3DS is going to go away. I mean, they're going to save face. They're not going to tell you hey, yeah, we only plan for 3DS to be around for X amount of time.
Sure.
That's not in their best interest. Nintendo does PR better than darn near any other company. So they're going to keep trying to sell these things, especially at these reduced prices. You can get a 3DS for $100 and, Black Friday's coming up. I'm sure you'll be able to get them cheaper. So they want to keep selling them for now, but I feel like there is an endpoint to that.
Absolutely. And we'll have to see where that endpoint is. Let us know what point of this graph you fall in. Are you someone who would be a red bar user, a blue bar user, or a gray? Remember that you need to play 80% or more to qualify for one of the dedicated color categories there. Otherwise, I would venture to say that a lot of our audience probably falls in the gray. I'm curious. I wish there was some sort of demographic breakdown of ages or location to see. My guess is, since this is encapsulating Japan, US, and Europe, that, again, this is just a pure guess, but that Japanese players probably fall more in the red bar, whereas there's probably more US and Europe users in the blue bar. and then obviously a healthy mix in the gray. But let us know where you fall. Definitely a curious and cool piece of information, and one that I'm happy Nintendo finally revealed so we could get some answers on one of our longest held questions. How will people play the Switch? Well, now we know, and now we're going to leave you until the next video. Until that time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch, its games, and Nintendo's great graphs. Until then, for myself and Gabe, Switch Force